Everybody hear us? I feel like we almost don't even need the mic.
Oh, we're good.
No, we're going to handle
He's
it.
going to start.
She's fine. Is there, David, is there anybody outside? No. Okay. Yeah.
If they don't come in now, it's like $5.
That's,
Is that the way you're supposed to?
I forgot what the name of the band is. Right. What? You want to do this? What?
It's 10. He wants you to go.
We don't need anybody in the back of the room.
So we're going to get started. This is Marketing for Games, otherwise known as gamification. Where I'm going to be the moderator. I'm Kevin Kirkpatrick. My job is to facilitate all of these people in talking about marketing for games and games for marketing, because those aren't the same thing, but they're related. And
Yeah.
Yeah, because we can't hear ourselves at all. Can we do this a little more?
it just,
About here? Is that okay?
can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, I think I'm just not tilting my head down enough. There we go. Better? Okay. So, games for marketing, marketing for games, gamification. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, starting with you.
Oh, I always have to go first. I'm Todd Biggie. I'm the CEO of a company called Cataboom, based here in Dallas. And we, just let me tell you 1 minute, 1 second version of what we do. We are a SaaS-based platform that allows you to build HTML5 responsive game mechanics to reward consumer behavior across any customer touchpoint, social, mobile, web, on any device to change people's behavior.
My name's Nolan Clemens. I am the founder of WooFosta, and we're working on a platform to help game developers with user acquisition and retention.
I'm Daniel Kokenauer, and I'm founder and CEO of AllCal, and which isn't a gaming platform, but I'm mainly on this panel because I'm also a founder of Funimation, which brought in all the Japanese anime into the U.S., and we sold lots of Dragon Ball Z games, but mostly from a selling standpoint.
And my name is Dan Cardell. I'm the Director of Technology at GeoWiz. We provide a online virtual world for kids to explore. Our digital communities are real world-based, so it gives kids familiarization with going to places and learning about things, and then we can also incorporate that into different types of businesses in order to interact with those people that are going to them. So.
Okay, so for the first topic of discussion is going to be the core of gamification. Can each of you kind of talk about how you've used the marketing in terms of connecting with what we like to call instant gratification?
So, should we just keep going up and down the line here?
Yes.
So, I went to UT and I graduated with an advertising degree, but also had a minor in psychology. Didn't figure out why I was at UT until this 3 years. You know, the rest of the time thought I was there to have fun. You know, what's great about what we're doing now is that we figured out that using Pavlov's theory of behavioral conditioning as a way to consistently and instantly reward a behavior can really change a behavior. And so we incorporate that and using gamification to tap into that dopamine element to really make a good feeling about something. So, hey, post a social, and every time you do it, we're going to reward you. So they post a social, we deliver a little game to them, they get a little dopamine rush, and we're using that gamification as a way to tap into that, and they're more likely, actually, exponentially more likely to do it again. So that's how we're using gamification as a way to change behavior.
One trend that I've noticed that has been getting a lot of traction recently is rewarded video. So one component of in-game advertising is that most of what is being advertised on there are actually other games. So they'll usually show a 20 or 30-second trailer of a game, and at the end they'll have download now or download for free. And the published or the advertiser, the game company that's wanting to promote that game, they pay a certain amount per install. And some recent reports suggest that for a loyal user, someone they'll consistently come back to that game, they're paying anywhere from $3 to $4 for United States on iPhone. Other regions will be cheaper. Unity, which is a cross-platform game engine, they recently reported that over 54% of players prefer to pay for their games by watching rewarded video ads. And usually they'll get some in-game currency or some other reward mechanic that incentivizes them to watch that video.
I was going to say, from Jiwa's standpoint, the whole idea of engaging the child or the parent to the property that they're getting ready to visit is how we're trying to, number one, reach out to those people that are going to come to a hotel or going to come to an event or come to some kind of a virtual world that we have inside the platform. Engaging those people and so that when they get there, they actually have the familiarization of the place, but then also then after they leave, doing follow-ups and having them still being able to come back into the platform, revisit the places that they've gone, and at the same time then introduce new content as whatever venue it is that we're hosting shows.
Yeah, in the in the olden days with Funimation, we didn't really do too much instant gratification, but one of the main marketing items was collectability. So, you know, if we sold a product, we would try to, if you get a certain number or you get all of the product, then you might have some real collectible that we would send you or you could ask for, and that seemed to be a popular way to sell products, with trying to find something collectible that someone wants to collect, because everybody loves to collect toys. That's still a big deal, but there's a lot of collectability in anime.
Okay, so on some of the similar topics to what you've addressed so far, is how has the demographics of what your particular audience is affected the way in which you reach out to them with various processes? I mean, you just mentioned about collectability. I mean, clearly that's, especially with your demographic, that was a very popular thing, but how did you come to those conclusions that was the solution for you?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was experience, because they'd already done it in Japan, and that was in Japan they're really big in collecting. Here they hadn't really done that before, so we took their marketing message, and that's how we did it. So we didn't invent that part.
Can I add?
Yeah, that's kind of for everybody.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because we get asked a lot, like, when you do these kinds of games, what's the demographic for it, right? And what we have found is it's less about even the game itself, it's really about what the value exchange is. So if I'm giving, somebody some free content and things along those lines, behind the scenes footage of something, that tends to go a little younger, because if you look at millennials and people younger than that, they actually value content higher than they actually value money and other things. So looking at what the value is, but I mean, to that fact is does everybody know what the #1 game demographic is? 30 to 50-year-old females, Candy Crush, Words with Friends, and what is the #1 person who purchases items in the home? 30 to 50-year-old females. So if you're looking at from how you're going to influence people through gamification, if that's a demographic you're going after, it's a very, very strong demographic.
Anybody want to add anything? Or?
I'd like to ask the audience real quick, how many of you play mobile games?
Don't be bashful.
Do you play?
Yeah.
Do you play?
How, oh, okay.
The age range is really... The age range, I mean, lot of age range here.
How-
but it's
how
it's
many-
across the board.
How many of you play the McDonald's Monopoly game?
There you go. There you go. Always play.
That's just kind of some examples of how gamification has creeped in without us even knowing it. It's in everything. And speaking of the Monopoly stuff, that's branding has a special place because that's one of the main reasons why a lot of companies have gotten into offering games is because it becomes a good way to sell their brand. And
So yeah, we just launched yesterday with Pizza Hut and the new Marvel movie. Thank you. Did you see it? It looked good, didn't it? So when you buy something off their new $5 menu, which is the behavior they're trying to drive, we'll reward you with cool stuff. You can play games, and when you play these games, you can win behind-the-scenes footage of the movie. Special trailers you can't see anywhere else, special signed stuff. Again, looking at a specific demographic they're trying to reach. That's what we were trying to focus on, is how can we create games and value exchange that has value to who they're trying to reach.
I'd say some of the two biggest factors that'll be driving brands or consumer packaged goods to advertising in games are ad blocking. So I've had ad blocker on my computer for 10 years, ever since Firefox came out with extensions. So it's not really so I'm actually not accustomed to seeing ads on some sites. So I'm gonna go on someone else's computer or on my phone watching YouTube videos, I see those pre-roll ads. So some publishers are finding that they have to change their user experience based on that, particularly on mobile. And then the second aspect is virtual reality. And advertising on that's going to be tricky because with mobile, they basically transposed what was going on web, banner and pop-up ads, and put those straight on mobile. But in virtual reality, that doesn't work. In fact, you can't even have normal menu interfaces because you're looking at the world through two different lenses. And so if you try to have a static menu, it's going to create a weird parallax effect and cause a feeling of sickness, which is, for VR, that's half the development, is making sure players don't feel sick. So those are probably two biggest ones that will be driving CPG. And then earlier I said that most in-game advertising is for other games. We're going to start seeing more generic apps get into that space because they're not that different than a mobile game. They're still something that you can download off the App Store. And so as long as they get an ROI on that, that may continue to grow.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say was in GeoWiz, our gaming platform is really for kids. And as an excellent point about the demographics is the fact that you've got to have something out there for the parents and the moms to take a look at, because number one, the kid's not going to get to play the game unless the mom, first of all, looks at it. And the mom's really not going to want to sit down and register an avatar and go through and do all that kind of stuff, but she's going to want to be able to check it out. So one of the things that we're making sure is that our content is not just kid-based, but it's adult-based as well, that we can do some things that an adult would enjoy as well. Just doing simple QR scavenger hunts for kids. We're actually now adapting that so that parents, when they go to hotels or whatever, can actually go through and do QR code scavenger hunts and then get that glass of wine or whatever it is at happy hour type of deal. So it's the demographics was an excellent point about not only understanding in our case that it's the kids, but you've got to also understand the ones that have the purchasing power.
I was just gonna say,
go ahead.
No, I was going to add all this. I mean, if you look at gamification, it's everywhere. Even you mentioned on regular apps and things like that. And I'm just going to throw this out there. Is anybody on Tinder or any of these dating apps? Everyone smiles. Come on. That's a dopamine rush every time you swipe right. It is a dopamine rush every time you see that match, right? We're seeing more and more just basic apps integrating gamification into how they create an experience and a tighter experience between the consumer and that company. And that's real important.
And as long as you've got something that makes them come back, it's one thing just to get them in there that first time, but it's something that draws them continually to come back to the app that you're actually going to be successful.
Well, let's talk about that. How, in your particular situations, you focus on user retention and keeping those people coming back every time?
So, so that's like a big part of what we do. So we reward you every time you come back with a little game mechanic. It's an instant gratification. We actually do some stuff, we were talking about this before, we do some stuff in game space, right? So every time you come back to a game, we're going to reward you. We see a 90% return rate from the day before for the first week if they know they're going to have a chance to win real world prizes, not just more coins. So, and then they see a 65% thereafter ongoing. So people, and usually those numbers are in the single digits. So we see that as long as we're continuing to give them instant gratification for coming, they will continue to come. And one more point to that is, and this goes across the board, even though gaming companies, we work with some gaming companies and they figure this out before everybody else. If you can get somebody to come back to your app, even if it's a business app or anything along those lines, if you can get them to come back 10 days in a row, you're exponentially more likely to have them use that app forever. It's a proven fact. It gets them, you're training a behavior. So if you can reward them or do something through gamification, they're going to do it forever.
You got to keep it dynamic too. That's one of the things. One of the things we found was a very interesting thing as we were watching some of the kids in our demographics go through some of the game elements that we have inside of GeoWiz. All of a sudden they were coming up with games we had never even thought of because it's a virtual world. We actually had kids saying, hey, I'm going to go hide in a different world. You come try to find me. So it was interesting, the fact that every day they're actually coming back and trying to find their friends or whatever in different worlds. So dynamics.
Anything else to add? Okay.
Well, I mean, on our app, AllCal, of course, retention is the #1 problem. So I'd be very interested in how a game could increase the retention of a utility app.
If you can gamify it. If you can gamify it, you can, or create some kind of reward mechanism with gamification. It's very powerful.
Even if the game's separate from the app.
Oh, absolutely.
What about connectivity with social media? 'Cause that's, I mean, if you're talking about marketing, that's where marketing is a lot.
Well, we do a lot of that. So that's, and another stat for you, we get a 50% engagement level. People going to Facebook, posting to Twitter, if they know they can get a little game and be rewarded for that behavior. So once again, it's a kind of that 50% engagement level.
Let me ask you this: How have you determined though what social media or outlets to go through? One of the things.
And that's a great question. So we get that a lot.
The reason I'm going to ask real quick was we were looking at, we're a technology company and we're coming up to speed on the marketing side of it, but one of the things that we were trying to go out was just do it in Facebook, just trying to do all the marketing in Facebook, and that doesn't necessarily work.
So that's a great question. We get that a lot. So one of the things that we tell people is don't build technology around a specific thing like Facebook. Everybody in this room, I guarantee you, one person's a Facebook person, one person's a text person, one likes email, one's like into Twitter, I only do Instagram. You have to now really market to people the way they want to interact with your brand, as opposed to the other way around. So being able to push them to one or the other, you're just going to exclude a whole market.
So you really need to be.
So you really need to be, and I'm going to do a little self-serving. The reason we built our system using HTML5 responsive games is because it can live anywhere. And it can be on Twitter, it could be on Facebook, it could be on Instagram, it can be in, I mean, you can watch a YouTube, and after YouTube, you're always allowed one link, make it a reward. And gamify it. And so you have to really, in these days, respect the fact that people are going to want to communicate in different ways with your brand.
So another issue I wanted to bring up is that on this panel, we've got people who work with other people's IP and content, and we've got people who create their own IP and content, and how the marketing is different for when you're completely in control versus when you have to work with somebody else.
I have all kinds of skills. Well, this video skills.
You wanna start first, or?
I don't know that I have an answer right off the top of my head for that one.
Is it too big of a question?
No, it's.
What about you with Funimation? I mean, you've got kind of the mixed bag of you can.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, with most things I've done since Funimation, I've tried to own 100%, and there's a lot of reasons to own 100%. You know, have your own URL, your own marketing plan. You just versatility is 100%. But then with Funimation, then we had to get everything approved through a Japanese company, Toei Animation or Shueisha, and it really kills the product. And your predominant effort has to be working with the owners of the copyright and trademark. And even then, you know, I can tell you the story. I mean, personally, I almost sold the Dragon Ball Z the movie to Paramount, and at the last second, Shueisha came in and said they wanted to do a direct deal and killed our huge franchise. And in my opinion, it would have been as big as Superman today. But they even now they've not allowed Funimation to really take over the brand, and they always want their input, and their input is very difficult to work with. So I mean, it's really a lot better to have your own IP, in my experience.
What about your experience?
Well, we you know, we sometimes get to work directly with a client, right? We don't create our own content. I mean, but we get to work directly with a brand, and then sometimes we have an agency in between us, and then sometimes we have another agency between us. So as our ability to affect the powerfulness of a campaign gets a little diluted. A great example is we recently did a movie that is a superhero fighting another superhero. You might have heard about it, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. But it may have been in a major retailer, that really the biggest. And working with both of them, they managed to dilute the entire program that we had created for them, just because policies and this and that. I mean, well, and what's interesting is like with the rewards we wanted to give away, you would think if you were working with Warner Brothers, they would actually give you content that is good, but their own internal groups could even get us the good content. So it's fascinating to watch it get killed, this wonderful idea, and it slowly gets diluted, and the ability to use gamification, and they don't get it, and so. But the new one for Pizza Hut, which I can't talk about, is wonderful. Go check it out, pizzahut.com/Captain America. And by the way, the movies these days need to get a new theme, because now it's superhero against superhero in every single movie. So
on that note, how does do you feel like there's a certain amount of payoff for the exchange of taking somebody else's content that you know you will reach more people, but it dilutes the product? And like, is it good for you
They
as
pay
a
better.
company's? Yeah, but is it good for you as a company's image because you've got higher publicity, but the product isn't the quality you're used to?
See, that's one of the things that we're doing at GeoWiz is doing brand awareness. So we have a platform that can go out and reach different demographics, different types of people. What we're trying to do is leverage upon that brand equity that they have. And so we do customized content for our clients, and it's got their look and feel to it and stuff like that. It's all about customization. But a lot of that customization then also takes a lot of time too. So.
Do you have anything to add on that?
So we don't currently license IP, but I've noticed that other game companies have done that to some success. For example, Zynga, they made Princess Bride slots, and now they have Willy Wonka slots. And so they're using these kind of older IPs and franchise, I guess, to invoke a sense of nostalgia in certain generations, maybe to attract an ideal demographic.
Yeah, I think it's okay to license products because you have a huge demand and you have a lot of customers. The trick is, at the end of the day, who owns the customers that you're selling to. And so if you can license products, and then you can kind of get in between where you're owning the customers, then that's great. But if your licensing products or your brand or your name isn't owning the customers, then you're not getting anywhere.
So what do each of you feel is your biggest obstacle for marketing in your particular venues?
I would just say exposure. I mean, getting the word out. I mean, as startups, it's always the hardest thing. You know, you can come up with the greatest idea, but it's how do you get that out to the marketing masses? How do you do it in the right social media? What are the right clients that you want to start off with? What are going to be your flagships? Because those, let's face it, you know, you get one or two of those flagships underneath your belt, and then you know you're pretty well set. So I think that's probably what I see as our biggest hurdle. Oh, and changing technologies. I mean, you know, whatever you're developing today is tomorrow is you're gonna have to change it up. So.
Well, one recent thing I brought up is that for major game publishers, and this doesn't just apply to marketing, but this applies to analytics and even some of the technical stuff, is SDK integration. And SDK stands for Software Development Kit, for those of you that don't know. And there's a few issues with that. One is the actual file size of the app. In some regions, they don't have either as much Wi-Fi or they don't have 4G LTE data available, so the file size is important. It has to be small. The other issue is performance. So if it causes too much memory to load, if it slows things down, people will press the home screen and find something else to play. So one issue, we're having to use server-to-server integration, because most game companies, they have their own architecture in place, or they're using a service provider that does that for them. So that's an avenue that we'll be using as we onboard game publishers.
Is the question more how we market our company, or is it more how we market for our clients? Is that the?
Well,
That's a really good question.
if you have two separate
Two separate
obstacles, then go
gosh,
for
yeah,
it.
No, I think you hit it best. I mean, it's like, what markets do you want to go after? Because really, once people understand what we do and explain the results and all that stuff, it's more of an education issue. But gamification is still kind of it came out a long time ago, but being actually the reality of it is now here, right? So our ability to really, you know, prove that promise of using games to make things more powerful. So I think finding the markets, once you get to them, being able to get the right people, we talked about that. I buy a lot of drinks for people. It's a joke, somewhat. But again, it's about really getting out there and getting in front of these people and educating them on what's possible from a gamification standpoint. On the client side, you know, if you don't market what we do, they won't know it's there. It's the same old thing it's always been, you know. So if, we've had clients who create these great programs, but then they don't spend any money on actually marketing them, and that becomes a big issue. You know, it's you have to do both. You have to create these great games, and then you have to tell people they're there.
Yeah, with having obstacles for marketing AllCal, that we have lots of obstacles. But the main thing is it's a complicated program, and because it's so in-depth, and people don't want to really learn a new program. They don't want to learn Excel. They don't want to learn Microsoft Exchange. So once they kind of pick up one, they don't want to really pick up another. And so that's a big obstacle. And I found that if someone uses our program for a week or two, they haven't got it. It takes months. But once they've got it, they do it for months, they start using it a lot and a lot more, and they start really liking it. But it takes that much time, just sort of like using Microsoft Word. You know, it takes a long time to really understand it. And so, you know, in today's world with Apple apps especially, people are making these really simple programs that just do one function. And if you do a real simple function, then that seems to be somewhat successful. And there's not that many complicated base programs like we're trying to create. So it's a pretty big obstacle.
Well, let's jump right into that, because every single one of you has mentioned technology as part of the issues that you've got. So when deciding your marketing strategy, how do you make the decision about, you know, this app is going to work best if we launch it in the iOS first, or needs to be a web-based app first, or
Well, if somebody figures that out, they're gonna be the next the next Steve Jobs and Gates. It's because things change so fast and so many different ways to deliver that content. It's tough to really tell. 5 years ago it was probably the browser. 4 years ago it was probably iOS. Now it's Android and iOS, and now pretty soon it's going to be the virtual reality glasses that everybody's going to probably be wearing. Well, maybe. But that's a tough thing, trying to understand, figure out which one to put out first. One of the things when we started going out into marketing GeoWiz was that they wanted it mobile. It was only browser based, and it was using some technology that didn't work on mobile iOS devices. So we had to then readapt in order to change that, because now everybody's got a mobile device, and even kids now. 9 times out of 10, the kids have even got a mobile device. So trying to understand that demographics and figure out which one is going to, that's a big challenge.
So there's at least 3 billion devices on this planet. At least 1 billion people play games, and that number is probably going to increase more and more. Particularly some regions like Southeast Asia, 10 years ago, some people didn't have a computer or internet access, and all of a sudden now they do. So that's been one trend. And then from the perspective of a indie developer, independent, someone who doesn't have a large marketing budget, that forces them to get into the indie developer community on Twitter. They have to do things grassroots, organic. YouTube and Twitch have been pretty recent trends in promoting games. Sometimes they're paid, and sometimes there's some issues where they have to disclose, hey, this is a sponsored video, or I'm receiving some benefit to that. And back to what I said about user acquisition, there's kind of a crunch where if you don't have a budget of $50,000 per month, it's hard to succeed, because these other large companies are spending very aggressively to keep their place in the charts.
So I'm the easy one, because we basically do really simple games. So we're able to do it in HTML5, and there's no integration because that's how our platform is designed. So you can just drop art into these games and launch them. So the reality is, but to be able to do a virtual world, we could not do that in HTML5. So it really depends on the game, the complexity, what you're trying, who your audience is, et cetera, et cetera. Depends on what technology you use, and then the more complex the game is, the more challenges you have.
Well, I wish we could do it in one platform like HTML5, because it's like rewriting the code. And so we have at least 2 complete sets of code, and not only that, and we've only been in business 3 years, and we've had to completely rewrite the code already once, which takes like a year. And I just don't know how people can be in the app business and support all the devices and support web, Android, and iOS without this kind of budget.
You have to go with HTML5.
Yeah, because that's our budget, and it's incredible when you're sitting there and we don't have that many users and only been around a year, and they say, oh, the technology's changed, you got to rewrite all your code. Unbelievable.
And then another subject, there are some solutions, SDK box to manage those things, and then also to manage the multiple so on Android, the actual app is an APK file. And in the West, it's pretty easy. We have the App Store, Play Store, and maybe the Windows Store, and Amazon. In China, there's about 60 good app stores. So how are you gonna, if you have to update your game, how are you gonna manage that? And 9 times out of 10, you have to use a partner to go there. And there's also some trends of Chinese companies wanting to publish to the West. So localization is a big problem, getting your game translated and making sure that it's culturally relevant. Those are some big challenges.
So we're almost done, and we're going to kind of open it up. Yeah. So if anybody.
Well, so yeah, so to repeat the question, you're asking for cross-platform frameworks. So, okay. Yeah.
I was about to say she
yeah,
doesn't know college. I don't think she's the code.
So like, okay. Yeah. So there's Unity, like I mentioned it earlier. That's good for games. That may be too much of a memory or battery usage if it's more app driven. Another platform is Xamarin, and that they were just acquired by Microsoft. And basically, they allow you to code Android and iOS apps in C#. Another framework, if you're looking at a web hybrid, is Ionic.
Way out of my league.
The only thing I want to say on that is there are there's a lot of open source libraries and cross-platform tools that are coming out. How many IT people do we have in here? Development. Okay, so not very many. One of the things your company's really got to make sure that they do their homework on is the whatever platform or whatever cross integration that you're going to use. You got to be really sure that they're going to be around for a long time, because you're going to spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort into something, only to find out that that company's either going to get acquired or all of a sudden they're completely changing everything. And I'm always a purist. I always like to make sure that we develop at the lowest level so we control everything. There's a piece of code right now that we don't control, and that is absolutely driving me nuts. So just make sure that whatever cross-platform technologies that you're using, that you do your due diligence in making sure that that company's going to be around.
So I have a company that is focused on employment and training opportunities for all people with disabilities nationwide. And basically, I have a job site that is desktop now.
Okay.
But we're trying to integrate within the next 2 to 3 years to go to the mobile app and we own the data and all that stuff. And I realized within this community of job seekers with disability, they're very tech savvy. And we did a licensing product with another startup out of Austin.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of Campus to Careers.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Nathan Green. So licensed through them, and then we're trying to sort of get it into integration where we're sort of transforming our own community, a subset community of job seekers with disability. But also, that's one thing. But the second thing is, I want to know if there's any provider out there that is looking to develop a game where we have a content, we have an idea that can be put into a game, sort of a branding aspect for what our purpose is about. But more so is there people or developers or company that's willing to sort of take on this initiative with us as part equity owner?
So to summarize the question, it's essentially you have a need to have branded content, but you're hoping to connect with an organization that is willing to do equity based. And is there a community or an effort to make that connection? I don't know if you all have answers for that. That's one of the other panels might have an answer for that. That's I believe they have a funding panel, so I would suggest asking at that one. One more question. Well, okay. Go ahead.
Can you guys give us an example that you're aware of a non-gaming company for whom gamification really worked? Local would be better.
Gaming, non-gaming.
Yeah,
Well, I gave the example of dating, right? Dating's not a gaming example, but they've turned it into a game, right? They even say not that I would know, they've even turned it into, you want to keep playing when you get a match? You want to keep playing? Because they've turned it into, dating has turned into a game.
So sales organizations, I've noticed, I've heard of some tools to incentivize their sales reps.
Yeah, so I'll give you, I have actually a real world example. We're working with a company called Delaware North. I don't know if you ever heard of them. And they every 2 weeks, twice a year, like spring and fall, they reward their employees for doing good things. And so what we're going to do with them is they're going to, old school, they're going to print out unique codes. And in our system, we actually can accept codes before we let you play. So they're literally, when someone does something good, they'll hand them a code, and then they have a URL on there, they could put their code in, and they scratch off and see what they've won. And it gives them that good feeling of, hey, I've just won something. Everyone can win at least something, but somebody wins something bigger. But the idea is that we're gamifying doing good things inside of a company.
Alrighty, and that brings us to a close. I'd like to thank all of my panelists for being here, and thank you all for attending.